Good evening. It's Wednesday, April 17th, 2019. I'd like to call the regular scheduled Planning Commission to order. Everybody, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Chair and roll call, please.
Mr. Dill?
Present.
Mr. Pacusa?
Here.
Mr. Morganti?
Here.
Ms. Krivda?
Here.
Mrs. Woodhall?
Here.
Mr. Russo?
Here.
Mr. Weldon?
Here.
Next on the agenda will be the approval of minutes of the regular meeting of March 20th, 2019. Is there any corrections or additions? Hearing none.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as entered.
Second?
Chair and roll call, please.
Mr. Dill?
Aye.
Mr. Pacusa?
Aye.
Mr. Morganti?
Aye.
Ms. Krivda?
Aye.
Mrs. Woodhall?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
Next on the agenda is 19-1C, Recovery Centers of America. The applicant is requesting conditional use approval to operate an inpatient residential drug and alcohol rehabilitation and counseling facility pursuant to Monroeville zoning ordinance 1443 as amended by section 40117. Property is located at 2380 McGinley Road in the L Special Use Zoning District. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jack Finnegan, and I represent the applicant. As Mr. Deal indicated, the application is by Recovery Centers of America, and what they want to do is use the existing, what used to be called the Health South building down on McGinley Road for a drug and alcohol rehab center. So it's a different type of rehab, but it's the same basic use that was always there, and it's kind of a derivative name, if you will, from a hospital, and that's kind of why we're here tonight, and that is to get a formal approval of that as a conditional use under your ordinance. You'll notice there are no plans or site plans or all the usual submissions we do because we don't have to do that. There will be no expansion of the building, of the footprint, and there'll be no expansion of any impervious surface. The building will be rehabbed and used for that purpose alone. And we have some people here tonight if you want to ask any questions about either the history of what was there or what's to come and it's be used. But it's basically going to be a different kind of a hospital, if you will, for drug and rehab patients, inpatients and outpatients. They'll explain that better than I will, but we're here basically for the zoning issue of a formal approval of this as a conditional use under your ordinance. I think you probably have with your materials the letter from Mr. Weldon indicating that that is in fact a conditional use under the ordinance, under the interpretation by him, and I believe your solicitor. So if you have any particular questions about the zoning end of it, please feel free to ask, and I'll do the best I can to answer it. If not, I'll give you some, and if you have any questions about the history of the site or the what they're going to do down there, we have some people here to respond, and with that, I'll throw it back to you after that short summary and see if you have any questions of me first.
Thanks, Jack.
Come on.
With respect to the facility,
Yes.
it's the current, it was Health South,
Yes.
Woodhaven, what have you.
Well, there were two different ones, I believe, but go ahead. Yes, it was Health South.
Throughout time, it's changed.
Yes.
You're not going to do any expansions to
No,
the building?
there'll be no expansion.
Other
The
than-
building's, it's a big building. It's about 78,000 square feet, and I think there's 9 acres down there. But there's not going to be any increase in impervious surface, and there's not going to be any expansion of the footprint of the existing building.
Okay,
Yeah, the renovations will be internal, and so,
okay.
okay. You have any questions about what's going in there, what they're going to do? Because we're happy to answer anything you want to know.
You pretty much outlined everything in the description of the
Yeah,
conditional
we did a
use.
little bit of an extensive application so you'd have an understanding of it, and that's really what's going to be there. If you want explanation of anything mentioned in the application, we'll be delighted to help you out and answer the best of our ability.
What is your anticipated amount of let's say, inpatient beds, outpatient beds? I mean,
Okay.
is it within the same facility?
You just jumped out of my area right now. Who's the best one to talk about that? Ed?
Started, you guys want to go?
If you could sign in, please. This is Denny Carice. She's a PhD, and she's going to tell you whatever you need to know about that.
So the plan for this particular site is 100 beds. We generally hope to operate at 90% occupancy, so that would be 90 patients. We will have detoxification there as well as residential, and then there will be outpatient there. In a typical Recovery Centers of America, the outpatient will have 1 or 2 intensive outpatient groups, and what that means is they'll meet 3 days a week from maybe 5 to 8 at night, or possibly 9 to 12 during the day. And then we also have individual outpatients like family therapy and things like that, and that'd be a smaller group coming kind of one family at a time.
What type of security are you going to have in the facility
Yeah.
for the patients themselves as well as the surrounding community?
Right. So the security within for the patients consists of just really a string of things that we do, from anti-ligature to things where they can't hurt themselves, all the way through to how we go through their belongings, how we, when and how we would test them to see if they're using drugs. All kinds of things, from when family visits, they actually can't bring purses or cell phones or anything like that in. They can't bring food in. They can't, the patient can't walk out to the car to say goodbye, frankly. So there's a whole set of things in place. We also take, if they do bring a cell phone, which they're not supposed to have, or an iPad, or whatnot, we take those. We also take their cash and any credit cards or wallet. And we lock them up for them while they're there so that they're safe and that they don't have access to them because they don't need them. So that's all put in place. We separate the men from the women quite a bit. They are on separate units, separate wings, and in separate groups.
Okay.
And we found that works very well. We are all adult, 18 and older. With regard to the community, this is a place where people kind of like your neighbors come. This is a commercially insured group. We are in network, but we are predominantly commercially insured. 98% use in-network insurance. And these are folks that come in wanting to be there. They may have had a family intervention, they maybe wake up going, hey, I'm not all I can be today, but they are not adjudicated. We are not in lieu of prison. They are not mandated to come here. They come, voluntarily.
Free will.
Yes. Now, if they want to leave, there's a really extensive process in place for them to leave if they want to leave before, their kind of discharge date. And it includes a number of things, because this is kind of a disease that tells you don't have a disease and makes you want to kind of get out when the going gets a little tough. So that when people do want to leave, we have a number of processes that are involved, from getting other peers involved to getting to having staff involved to calling their family, because we want them to stay, because all the research shows that if they stay and do a full course of treatment, they'll do well. If we can't get them to stay, and we really talk them out of it most of the time. In the cases where we can't get them to stay, they just want to leave, they can't just walk off. First of all, you got to remember we have keys, cell phones, which is another reason why we have it. They have to get their discharge papers from the doctor. If they're on any prescriptions, they have to get that from the doctor. By then, their families probably come. And if the family's not involved, which is actually rare for us, for the family not to be involved, we don't let them leave until we put them in either their family's car or we drive them somewhere. They can't just walk off and leave. They're also not a group of people that are going to walk off in the middle of the night without their cell phone and their keys and their wallets and things like that. So there's a lot more, and I can go into it more if you like, but want to give me specific questions or?
How broad of a region are you expecting your patients to come from? Just like the surrounding communities or
No,
beyond that?
that's a great question, because we are a neighborhood model. I don't believe in a flyaway model. You know, people that fly away to get well, they come back to the same place, they don't have the supports, so we are predominantly local. I think most of our patients in our other sites come, a good chunk come within 30 miles, a 30-mile radius of our sites. And again, because we're in network, they tend to have the insurance that is covered in this area as well. So that we don't have a flyaway model where people come in from other parts of the country or whatnot. It's just not the best clinical care you can give. Yeah.
So your staffing is equipped to keep them in place? Are there lockdown units? Because you're saying they can't walk off, and that means they would have to have one-on-one supervision, which probably
Right.
is not going to be. What's your ratio with your staff?
No, yeah, they don't walk off. If they want to leave, they have to go through these processes to be able to leave, but it's not locked down. It's not, we wouldn't take people who need a lockdown kind of facility. Give me your first question again, I'm sorry.
Your ratio of
Okay,
staff?
so
to-
with in a 100-bed facility, we'll have 110 or 120 FTEs, which will really be more like 200 staff. One of the things we insist on is having psychiatry involved, having registered nurses 24 hours a day, which is not a requirement by the state, but we wanted that. We have trauma specialists. We have a lot of recovery support staff. We do background checks on everybody, both staff and patients. So the ratio is about 1-to-1 clinically, but not 1-to-1 with every patient, directly, So remember, we're staffing, doing clinical work from about 8 in the morning till about 9 at night, and we're doing it 7 days a week. So there may be a group of 15 with 1 or 2 staff there.
So when you're talking about your full FTE, that's not per patient. That's each one per patient. That's your kitchen help, that's your cleaning help?
No,
that's your-
I'm sorry,
that's
that's our
your-
clinical staff.
That's your clinical staff?
But remember, they're spread out over 7 days, so you're right. On any given moment, it's not 1-to-1 in the building, but that's just our clinical staff, yeah. So that includes everybody from our medical director to recovery support staff, but it doesn't include, for example, kitchen staff, cleaning staff, groundskeepers, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a heavy, high staff. I started treatment systems in in about 15 countries that never had treatment before, and my background is in the science, and I just came in and said, this is the way we do it, if we're going to do it this way, and it's going to be evidence-based practices with psychiatry, with a heavy staff, and with family involvement, and so it came to pass, yeah.
You're located in a rather isolated private area there. As your other facilities, are they also that are spread around the country or wherever?
Yeah, so we have, so our first site opened in Mays Landing, New Jersey, which is about half an hour from Atlantic City, and that was April 2016. And then we have 2 sites outside of Boston. We have 2 sites in Maryland. One is in a very rural area. The driveway to the site, I think, is 2 miles. So that's a much more rural area. In Pennsylvania, also we're in Devon, which is outside of Philadelphia. That is more of a commercial area. So we have a variety of different situations.
And Mr. Russo, I believe you asked about the security there. What about your camera system there,
Yeah.
included, not just physically, but?
That's right. So we're everywhere except obviously the bedrooms and the bathrooms. We have security cameras. In an average site, we have 200 to 300 security cameras. We have they're showing at all of the nurses' stations. On a unit, one of the reasons why we have the sites that are 100 beds is so that we can have a unit for young adults with heroin problems, and another unit for trauma victims, and another unit. So on a unit, you'll tend to see there will be 3 groups of 8, because that's our number in a small group. And there'll be a nurse's station, and there'll be a couple of recovery support station areas, and the TV monitors will be up for there. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that we lock the doors so that people can't come in, but we can't lock them so they can't get out for fire code reasons, apparently. And so they're all alarmed. So if somebody goes out a door, we know right away. It flashes up on all the monitors, and staff have a protocol in place for what they do with that. Typically, it's somebody that wants to go out and have a cigarette, but you know, that's rare. You know, we haven't had too much a problem with that, yeah. Happy to answer any questions you want.
Any other?
Good.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of?
Thanks.
Questions?
No public comments yet.
Any public comment?
Wait,
Girls-
what-
girls have any comments,
Did,
questions?
did Dr. McGinney do this so I was on good behavior, or what?
They're watching you.
My grandkids do that enough.
Board members have any other comments or questions?
No.
Seeing so, anybody care to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion for 19-1-C Recovery Centers of America to be approved on conditional use as stated this evening.
I'll second.
Moved in second. Sharon, roll call, please.
Mr. Dill?
Aye.
Mr. Pacusa?
Aye.
Mr. Morganti?
Aye.
Ms. Krivda?
Aye.
Mrs. Woodhull?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Evening. Thank you.
Yeah. Make the motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'll second that motion.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dill?
Aye.
Mr. Pacusa?
Aye.
Mr. Morganti?
Aye.
Ms. Krivda?
Aye.
Mrs. Woodhull?
Aye.
Mr. Russo?
Aye.
That's great. My kids couldn't sit here that quiet.